Alright, so I watched a lot of people play Revenant for the past couple days since he was released, and there's a lot of mistakes I see people making when they use this character. So what I'm going to do in this guide is I'm going to talk about some of the mistakes that I've seen, and I'm going to talk about how to correct those mistakes and actually use his abilities so he feels overpowered when you play him. So let's get started. Alright guys, so when it comes to learning how to really play a character, one of the things you have to understand is what are the limitations of that character. Because when you understand your limits, you will know to play within them, meaning you'll be a smart player and you won't make as many mistakes. So the biggest limiting factor for Revenant is the fact that he doesn't have as much escapability. So for example, if you're Wraith and you get into trouble, what do? You escape, you press Q and you escape into the void. There, you have some escapability with that. If you're Marriage and you get into trouble, you deploy a decoy and at least it gives you some diversion that you can distract enemies. With Revenant, there isn't something like that, where if you're in the open and enemies are tracking you down, there really isn't much you can do unless you have your ult, and that's about it. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. It's just, I think it's important to understand that limiting factor on Revenant so you know how to play him. Now, and the thing is, he wasn't designed to be someone who can face tank a bunch of characters or eliminate a bunch of characters that are aiming at him at the same time. No character should be designed like that because that would be broken. The main way Revenant was designed was to be kind of a silent killer. I think that's the best way I would put it. And if you play Revenant as if you were a silent killer, you will actually dominate your games. And that's what I'm going to talk about in this guide. I will teach you how to be a silent killer because that's what you should be doing. So now I told you that Revenant doesn't have a lot of escapability. So what does that mean? Well, what it means is don't put yourself in awful positions. And that can go for any character in the game, but that holds very much true for Revenant, who doesn't have a lot of escapability unless you have his ult. So the great thing about it is that Revenant actually has passive abilities that help you put yourself in good positions all the time. And this is something that people always forget about Revenant. They get so obsessed about his ult, they get so obsessed about his tactical ability that they completely forget about his passive abilities, and they play him as if they were playing Bloodhound or Wraith or any other character in Apex. The thing is, you can't. You have to think differently when you're playing Revenant. And the main thing I'm talking about is his climbing skills and his crouching. When he crouches, his speed is normal. And you also know that crouching eliminates footsteps so your enemies can't hear you. He can climb higher and faster than other characters. So this is the very thing that I don't see people abuse enough. It's a very powerful passive, and it alone will help you get into good positions so you don't get into trouble where you don't need escapability. And the great thing about always being in good positions is that you'll be the one that's attacking. And that's the key to playing Revenant, is that you always have to be the attacker, because as soon as you get on the defense, unless you have your ult, you're going to be in trouble. So the number one thing you have to understand is that when you're playing Revenant, and this is going to sound really weird, but don't think about taking the stairs. Don't think about taking the stairs. Instead, always try to abuse your climbing ability. Guys, there are some tall buildings in this game that I've been able to climb because of Revenant. So this alone opens up new avenues for you to play. All of a sudden, if an enemy is on the second floor of a building and your team is trying to push up from the first floor and they're fighting on the stairs, you can do something different. You can exit the building, climb up, and if there's stairs leading down, you can go from the roof down to the second floor and surprise the enemy team from behind, and they don't even know. And this is how you're supposed to kind of use Revenant. I'll give you guys a challenge. The next time you play Revenant, every time you're about to use the stairs to get to an upper floor, don't. Instead, try to climb from the outside of the building and watch, you'll be able to do it. And I'm not telling you to always just climb no matter what, but I just want you guys to see how much you can really abuse this climbing ability. The great thing about climbing is that it's silent. So if you're climbing up a building behind your enemy, they don't know you're coming. And all of a sudden, they also don't expect it because they're guarding the stairs. So they would think if anyone was going to come up, they would come up from the stairs. But all of a sudden, you're climbing up a building like you're Spider-Man, and you're popping up, and you're using your Q ability, and you're stunning them. and then you're killing the whole squad before you know it. Also known as a silent killer. Ever since Revenant has come out, I've only played Revenant mostly. And every time I go back to another character, I actually find myself missing playing Revenant because that character actually has a lot less mobility than Revenant did. All of a sudden, when I'm trying to climb a certain place, I can't climb it. And you can see the vast difference in mobility when you play Revenant. And then I haven't even talked about the crouching aspect of it. Revenant's crouch passive shines in close quarter fights. I can't tell you how many fights I've won because of that. What I've done is that anytime I've sensed an enemy in my area that's close by, I've just gone into crouch mode automatically and I've started moving around because crouch doesn't make any noise. Yet, I'm moving around at a normal speed that you would normally move around in a fight. When in close quarters, you're not going to be sprinting in a close quarters fight. So I'm moving it around at a normal walking speed without any footsteps, and yet I can still hear my enemy moving. So as I hear him coming around that corner, I can easily line up my crosshairs, and he probably doesn't even know that I'm there because he has lost all his hearing in terms of my footsteps. And Apex players have gotten so used to footsteps when an enemy is nearby, that when they suddenly don't have footsteps, they feel like maybe you just went away, but you've been there and juking him with your crouch the whole time. So crouching when you're in close quarters, especially like guys, when you're in a building, for example, and you feel like there's a character maybe on the ground floor and you're on the second floor, go into crouch mode easily, and now you can move around and you can hear that character, and as he comes up you can aim your crosshair at him. So as you guys can see, I'm 6 minutes into this video and I'm still only talking about Revenant's passive abilities. And guess what? I'm gonna continue because there's still another tip that I haven't told you guys that makes Revenant insanely powerful in 1v1s, and it's a movement tip that you can abuse in fights, and it will help you a lot. So something people always talk about in every FPS game, not just Apex, is the simple idea of strafing in fights. So it makes it a little harder for your opponent to move. So anyone who doesn't know, this is just pressing A and D and going left and right while you're fighting, so you can add a little movement to your character so it becomes a little harder for your opponent to hit you. This is nothing new. People have been doing this for ages, ever since Apex came out. However, you can take this to a whole new level with Revenant, because we know that his crouch speed is roughly equivalent to his walking speed, if not more. So that means when you press crouch, there really is not a big difference in your movement speed. You're not slowing down that much. So now all of a sudden, while you're strafing left and right with A and D, what you can add to that is a crouch. And you can actually perform a crouch strafe, making your character incredibly hard to hit. Because now not only are you going from left to right at a very normal speed, but you're also changing the levels of your head, so making it harder for your opponent to hit you. So this is something that you should definitely abuse in 1v1 fights. It will make a world of difference. And just go into practice range and practice it so you can kind of get used to the movement. And again, when it comes to pressing A and D, don't press A and D too quickly. If you're moving really quickly, then it doesn't really make a difference. Make sure you're at least leaning to one side before you press the other side, and then while you're doing that, press crouch. And now you're in a 1v1, and you have a very good chance of winning that fight, because it makes it very hard for your opponent to hit you. Alright guys, so let's talk about his tactical ability that you press with Q. It's going to do 10 damage, and it's going to pretty much disable all abilities of your enemy for 10 seconds. So now let's run through the situation. You see a team that's on the high ground. You climb a building with your passive ability, and all of a sudden they have your back turned to you, and what's the first thing you do? You press Q. And ideally what you want to hope is that you can get a bunch of enemies with this, because they're standing close to each other, because it does have AoE, because it will affect multiple targets. So once you do this for 10 seconds, these people won't be able to use their abilities, and you have to be careful because they can still shoot their guns. So even if it's 3 against 1 or even 2 against 1, I don't care if you hit your Q, you're probably still dead, because they have their guns and they can shoot them. But if you can do this in a 1v1, it again gives you a massive edge. So now think about crouch strafing in a 1v1 after pressing Q on your opponent. All of a sudden, their mobility is very limited, especially if it's like a Wraith, because she can't press Q and, you know, leave the fight, and she can barely hit you because you're crouch strafing. And now the fight is pretty much on a silver platter for you to pretty much win it, because there's not much that an opponent can do because you have them in a checkmate position. But also, if you hit this on multiple targets and your teammates are nearby, I mean, they're pretty much done anyways, because now you have three. If it's a 3v3 and, you know, the other 3 people can't use their abilities, what are they gonna do? They all of a sudden they can't put down their ults, they can't use their abilities. So this is something that you have to keep in mind. Like, Revenant is he has good abilities that are powerful, but you have to communicate with your team and you have to be mindful of the situation. And it's the player that is going to determine whether he's overpowered or not. It's not Respawn that determines if he's overpowered or not. One of the interesting things with Revenant's ability is that you can actually queue it up while you're aiming and while you're running and while you're even walking. So once you press Q, you can hold it and it will actually give you, you know, a projectile line of where the ability will, you know, land once you release Q. Obviously it will land in the direction you're aiming, but it will give you a projectile line so you can get the exact location that it will land. Now what you can do is, as you're running, you can queue this up. You can queue this up while you're aiming down sight. And another interesting thing that you can do, that you're gonna see on the screen here, is you can actually take an arc star or a grenade and, you know, cook it in one hand, and then at the same time you can rev up your Q ability on the other hand. So all of a sudden you can hit someone with an arc star and you can hit them with your own Q. So now all of a sudden they can't use their abilities and they're completely disengaged from the fight because of the arc star. You know, it has that, you know, weird animation that happens on screen where you pretty much can't do anything. So think about it, if you hit 2 or 3 people with this, it's pretty much over for them. So even if you hit one person, again, it's over. So make sure you keep this in mind when it comes to using his ability Q. It is situational, and again, one of the things you have to understand is that his ult and abilities are maybe a little underwhelming just to kind of make up for his passive ability, because he probably has the most powerful passive ability in the game because of his movement passive, and that is something you use literally every second that you're playing. So maybe they had to you know, just tone down his other abilities a little bit, which kind of makes sense. But even with the toned down ability, Q is still a very good ability in certain situations, and, you know, definitely keep in mind the combo that you can use it with Arc Star. Alright, now let's talk about his ultimate. As you guys know by now, you can put a totem down, and, you know, hopefully all of your teammates, including you, press E on it so you can get the effect. Once you're in death form, there is a certain area that you can't leave for that effect to still be there, and while you're in death form, if you die, you will respawn back at the totem. This is a very good ultimate, and I think one of the main criteria that I would use to determine, you know, if an ult is good or not is if that ult can be used defensively and offensively. Because if you can use an ult defensively and offensively, that means that I know that this ult will give me value throughout any game in any situation. It means that I know that I don't have to be in certain positions to use this ult and get value out of it. I know that I can be either in attacking mode or a defensive mode, and I will get value out of this ult. And that's the main thing you want when you're determining if an ult is useful or not. The number one tip that I would give to you when it comes to using this ult is communication. When you're about to place the ult down, 5 seconds before you place the totem down, let all your teammates know, hey guys, come to me, there's a totem here, and make sure you interact with it. Make sure you let your teammates know, because if you don't let your teammates know, then you're losing out on essentially 33 or 66% of the value. It's that big. So make sure you let your teammates know the totem is down. There's also a pinpoint system, obviously, in Apex, so, you know, if you're going to do anything, just pinpoint it, because I'm pretty sure if you pinpoint it, Revenant says, hey, there's a totem here. Now secondly, we know that we can use this ult as an attacking, offensive difference maker when you put it down, and, you know, you can pretty much go in with the mindset in a fight that, hey, I'm going to do as much damage as I can, and, you know, no matter how much damage I take, I know I'll be fine. But I'll give you a defensive way that you can use this ult. Let's just say a squad comes and they kill 2 of your teammates, and, you know, they're in the and you have to recover their cards. I think a smart thing in a 3v1 situation is to maybe disengage. I don't care which character you play, it's just going to be a lot to ask for. However, you don't want to leave your team behind. You want to at least recover their cards, so maybe you can call, you know, a ship so they can come back and join you in the game. So what you can do in this situation actually is, you know, you can place a totem as far as you possibly realistically can from that squad, and you can run in and you can get your team's cards, and then if they kill you, you're back at the totem. You can pop a med kit and you can go recover your team with the spaceship. So that's one way you can actually do this. All you have to do is just press E when you come to their cards, and if at that point they kill you, it's fine. So if you think that is incredible value, you have just given your team two players back, which is insane. It's actually probably more value than actually wiping a whole squad, because you're giving your team a second chance. A really big brain way to really use this, guys, is if there's a respawn station near where your team was dead, maybe you put a totem, you know, near the respawn station and just hide it. That way, as soon as you pick up those cards, your totem is going to respawn you right near the respawn station, and you press E and you get your teammates back, and maybe you can push that team again. You can also use the totem to kind of res your teammates, you know, when they're in a bleeding position. You know, if they're in a vulnerable position where you know you might get shot, maybe you just put the totem down and you try to res them like that. So that way, if you do die, you come back to the totem. Also, guys, another way to use this totem, and this is very situational. It's kind of a meme of an idea. Where if you're fighting a team in close quarters and it's a full team of 3 and you're stacked on grenades and explosives and arc stars, what you can do is you can actually put your totem down and simply run to that team and throw as many grenades and explosives into them as you can. And you know, they're gonna be in close quarters, you're gonna be right there, so you're probably gonna die. But the thing is, it's gonna do so much damage to them, and it's gonna do AoE damage. So maybe you get all 3, or maybe you even get 2, and then your teammates can clean up the rest. You don't have to worry about yourself, because if you die, you're gonna have another life because you have the totem, and you can just pop a med kit and you can go finish off the rest of the work. Like, you just do so much damage with those explosives. Tough for that team to recover all that health and shield unless they have a Phoenix kit, which is rare. So that's another thing that you can do. It sounds like a meme of an idea, but I think in certain situations, maybe that's your only choice. So if you're playing Revenant, always stock up on explosives and arc stars and everything. And obviously, ultimate accelerants don't hurt either. Alright guys, that's going to do it for me with this guide. Thanks for watching. Again, the number one tip I want to give with Revenant, guys, is to change the way you play. Every time you're about to climb a stair, don't. Look for a wall and climb that instead. Once you get into the habit of climbing walls instead of stairs, you'll always have the high ground in fights, and you'll be able to flank enemies without them knowing. And also, when you're in close quarters or an enemy is nearby, don't walk and don't run. Crouch. That will give you silence, and you'll be able to hear your enemies better, and that's going to give you the edge that you need in fights. Remember, guys, Revenant is an attacker. He's a silent killer. If you're going to make a lot of noise and act crazy, you will find yourself in fights that you cannot win. Make sure you put yourself in good position so you can be a dominant Revenant player and win the game. If you guys want more tips on Apex or any other game, you guys can come by my stream and ask me any questions that you want in stream, and I'll answer them right there. It's Twitch Spicy Cruiser. If you like this video, leave a like. Make sure you let me know what you think of this in the comment section. Thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate the support. I'll see you guys next time.